Good morning. Can you hear me? Did I adjust that? Perfect? Okay. One little caveat before I get started, which is I work for government. There's this little thing in the Texas Constitution that says a government employee cannot promote the business of another company for private gain. This was probably written before we had the things such as user conferences, before we banded together in support of a craft. We all come from very different backgrounds, but we all have the same use case and the same human need to share information. So the way that I navigate these tricky waters as somebody who does innovation in government is I tell you my story. What I'm going to tell you today is how I got to where I am now and what knowledge management means for me in supporting innovation in organizations. And it's also the story of innovation in government as well. So take that as you will. Caveat over. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. So a little bit about me and why I care about innovation. First of all, this is me. Some colleagues of mine found this comic and they had the artist sign a copy for me. This is what it actually looks like inside my brain. I'm a complete and total knowledge pack rat. I sit down on weekends. My favorite thing to do on Saturday morning is to read everything I can get my hands on. I use Pinboard antisocial bookmarking. I've been using that since Delicious did whatever it did and made me mad. But it's antisocial, right? It's really just for me. It's my curation, and I have all of this, and I want to share it with other people. So I geek just about everything, and I stuff about as much as I can in my head. And this is a story about sort of looking back on my career, a little bit of retrospective sense-making, if you will. Generation X, nobody talks about us, but we're the connectors. We're the ones who've been disrupted from the very moment we began our careers. And I began my professional walk of life when I graduated from high school in 1991, and I was going to college to study international relations, and that summer the Soviet Union fell apart. And all of my professors were like, oh yeah, the Cold War, not really sure how to teach you about that. And then 1995, when I graduate undergrad and I go to grad school, the World Wide Web is created, and every organization therein and since has been trying to figure out what this means for their operations. September 10th, 2001 was my first day on the job at the State Department as a Foreign Service officer serving overseas. Everything that I had studied became very different on day 2 of this new career that I had been studying. And if you know the history of embassy operations, 1998, we had bombings at our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. And the organization that looked at what happened said, y'all need to move from a need-to-know organization to a need-to-share organization. Because there was information out there about this, and you didn't share it because you have these silos. And that began the journey of government to wrestle with how do we share our information. And in 2001, Colin Powell, who was our secretary, he created a task force at the State Department called e-Diplomacy. And they were dedicated to knowledge leadership. And that's the organization that taught me everything that I know about knowledge management and why it is critically important for our organizations in the 21st century. Meanwhile, I go overseas. I'm serving at our embassy in Rabat, Morocco, and during this time we see the advent of social media. Not only our regular social media, but also GovLoop. It's coming to government. People are talking not only about Web 2.0, they're talking about organizational 2.0, management 2.0, government 2.0. And I'm still dealing with carbon copy work order forms. Which leads me to the adage that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. And I can tell you that in government, it is way not evenly distributed. So I went back to Washington. I worked on some management reforms. Wanted to know why it was so broken that we had carbon copy work order forms in 2007. And when Secretary Clinton came in, She goes, there's going to be this website where employees post their ideas. I said, man, that's amazing. We're totally ripe for that. I'd been studying IBM Innovation Jams. We had this Office of E-Diplomacy. They'd been running for close to a decade. We had blogs. We had wikis. We had all kinds of tools in the State Department that I thought would be ripe for harnessing ideas. And so that began my trajectory, my journey on innovation. And that'll come up next. And what I learned is that the world is interconnected. Disruption will come, whether in the form of opportunity or threat, and there is no script. There was no script for my teachers. There was no script for our consular officers who gave visas to hijackers, and for the pilots who thought you just have to land a plane at point C. There was no script for social media. There was no script for how to set up an innovation platform inside of an organization. And when there's no script, we have to be intentionally improvisational. And in order to be intentionally improvisational, we need access to knowledge. So that leads me to my definition of innovation, which is any project that is new to you and has an uncertain outcome. And that is a perfect definition for how government deals with innovation. It may be slightly different for a product or a service company, and that's totally fine, as long as you use your definition of innovation intentionally and not, bandy it around like a buzzword. Where are we next?
We'll get to that.
Okay. So that's sort of the end of my story, and what I wanted to do then is go into how knowledge supports innovation and get into a little bit of theory about what it means to manage innovation when you're dealing with a project that's new and has an uncertain outcome. What I've been doing for the past year, I arrived in Austin in 2014, last March. And what I set out to do for the first year is set up what I would call innovation infrastructure. And innovation infrastructure are those skills, those processes, the teams, the technology, the information that goes into dealing with a project that's new to you and has an uncertain outcome. And there was when I was at the federal level and we were trying to figure out how to set up an innovation platform, an ideation platform, I had learned that the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, had such a platform. And I go, oh great, I met Tina. Tina, how do you do it? What's your terms of use? How do you govern it? How do you evaluate ideas? How do you handle, moderating a community? What happens when you have flame wars? What happens if you have a union and they all of a sudden think that, you're circumventing, the collective bargaining process by collecting ideas straight from employees? What do you do with all of this? And so Tina told me. And then people go, Tina's busy. Kerry, what do you know? And the Department of Transportation came to me, and the FAA came to me, and I'm like, and soon Tina and I were overwhelmed. So we set up an interagency community of practice. And when I came here, I said, that community of practice is what enabled us as interagency colleagues to set up a new program when there wasn't a script. And it didn't matter that all of us had completely different business cases. It mattered that we had the same method that we were trying to apply. It mattered that you had tried it, and even though I had a different use case, I could adapt what you had learned to my context. And I was yearning for a way to collaborate because we just had email, and like I said, SharePoint is terrible. Even though I'm a SharePoint super user, it'll still take me 8 hours to set up a community of practice the way I think it needs to be done in order to promote shareability. Who has that kind of time just to do configuration? So when I got here, I was thinking to myself, what would such a community of practice look like? And in end of May last year, we went to the ATX Hack for Change. And sadly, I wasn't very successful in getting my projects pitched, but I had a lot of time to sit down and noodle what this ultimate community of practice would look like. Ideation community of practice, innovation infrastructure, it looks like that. Oh yeah, innovation infrastructure, the process, really, you need to frame the problem you're solving for first. Then you need to formulate your solution, and then you need to implement your solution. Please do it in that order. Don't just spark ideas. Knowledge and insights come before ideas. Framing the problem you want to solve comes before the ideas. Make your ideas solve and serve for a higher purpose. Innovation technology infrastructure, right? I need to manage my contacts and relationships in order to make the network work. I need to manage my knowledge. I need to manage insights. I need to manage ideas. I need to manage projects. This is how technology supports innovation. And the brighter ones in this matrix is where Bloomfire is exceedingly helpful. Okay, so here I am for the ATX Hack for Change last year, and small commercial announcement, public service announcement. On June 5th through 7th of this year, we are sponsoring the ATX Hack for Change. It is sponsored by Code for America. It's a national event. It's in cities all over. So for some of you in Houston and other cities, there should be a hackathon in your neighborhoods. It is about making your governments work better and work for the communities that they serve. So ATX Hack for Change, we're looking for volunteers. Not only people who know technology, you can know how to spell HTML, but you don't have to use it. Sometimes we need technical writers, sometimes we need end users. Look it up, it's gonna be a great program. This was me last year, noodling an idea. And what I came up with was, it looked like this: the ultimate virtual community of practice. And I said, what it would do is it would be decentralized, it would be asynchronous, it would enable learning together, but it's not about projects. Like, I don't want to do together, I just want to learn together. It would be a different application, but a common method. It would be emergent, it would be just in time, it would be self-help. And I said all of the social media sites that I know, like if I could cobble together all of their functionalities, I would want the Facebook, LinkedIn version of a multimedia stream. I would want to be able to curate stuff that I liked out of that stream. I would want the Management Innovation Exchange is where people share their hacks and stories about management in the 21st century. I would want something like Bright Idea, which is what we use for idea management, where we can sort and maybe do little challenges and themes. I would want that serendipity that Twitter enables. I would want a tag list or cloud so that I could kind of browse and contribute to that serendipity. I would want organizations to be able to cluster themselves a little bit differently. And of course, I would want high findability. It's really got to support just-in-time learning. This is what I was doing last May before I even knew that Bloomfire existed. And from what I knew from my time in the State Department is we had WordPress, we had Bright Idea, we had SharePoint, and we had MediaWiki. And these were the only tools that I knew, and all of them take a fair bit of wrangling in order to set up. It's that same, it's gonna take you 8 to 24 hours to 40 hours to configure this platform before you even get a chance to start using it. So meanwhile, we were going through this thing called an election here in the city of Austin. We were having a big political transformation where, sad to say it's in the news a lot this morning, but we won't talk about that. Like Livestrong will have a little corner in the back if you want to talk about that. But we have a whole lot of new council members. And what I saw as an innovation office is there's going to be a whole lot of people who need to onboard and learn how this ship is run, and making sure that information is findable, making sure we're not just handing you a big fat 3-ring binder like we used to do in the State Department until we figured out how to put it all on an iPad. What I really needed was a solution to give new council members their briefing materials in a way that they could sift and search and sort and save it for later and have just-in-time delivery when they needed to refer back to their materials. And as somebody who just drank through that fire hose in the past year, I can sympathize with everything that they're having to get up to speed on. So somebody goes, hey, have you heard of Bloomfire? I think it was the Austin Technology Council. Said, hey, have you heard of Bloomfire? And I said, no, but I wanna. And then Jordan and I talked, and I was like, is this a manna from heaven or what? Like, I'm thinking back to that, to that community of practice, right? And then I see this, and I'm like, did you read my mind? I'm pretty sure that you did. So we put all of the City of Austin orientation materials into Bloomfire. It was ready to go. This was in October, I think, that we met and that we got together and contracted. And by January, we had all their materials in here. It was that easy. A little bit of a hustle for content creation, but it was great. This is viewable to the public. The other thing is that we support in innovation is open government. Open government means that every citizen ought to be able to interact with the same information that government has. And so every citizen can interact with the same briefing book that council got. It was really important to me. So this is publicly available. If you go to austincouncilorientation.bloomfire.com, you will see what we've done here. But we don't stop there, right? That was the first use case, and government peculiarities. We have this thing called the Open Meetings Act that has certain bizarre technological requirements, like one discussion board, one click away from the city website. You communicate anywhere else as a council, and you have a walking quorum, and you can go to jail. So we have a few peculiarities that most organizations don't have. So while this is a social tool, for this use case, it was not social, because we have some regulation wrangling that we have to do. But we have that community of practice that I always wanted to build, and super duper excited, because now I can share with the innovation offices in Nashville and San Francisco and Philadelphia, and back to my friends at the federal level. I can bring in use cases from private sector that map to what we're trying to do. And I spent one weekend, because I'm this kind of a crazy person, taking all of my antisocial bookmarks and plugging it into here. So in one weekend, I curated about 200 links, and my boyfriend was really super annoyed with me. He was like, "Get out of the chair." I'm like, no, we've gotta share. This is also available to the public. It is civicinnovation.bloomfire.com. If you want to know how cities and states and nations are innovating their government all around the world, use cases are here. We also believe in open data as part of our open government initiative. So we have an open data platform. One of the struggles with open data for governments is not necessarily a willingness. Sometimes it's the structure of the data, which is highly technical. Every government has gone through this surge of trying to produce data, and then this sort of period of stagnation as we recognize it's a little bit harder than we thought. So here we want to band together the practitioners of open data so they can support each other in the learning of how to make data more accessible to the public. Working groups. So another thing that the city does is we have a lot of citizen working groups, and we have a lot of really complex projects. Think about how complicated it is to rewrite computer code. Like if you wanted to just completely overhaul Bloomfire's software, wow, that's a big thing. Now bring that up to scale and think about transforming the entire city's land development code. We've just upped the complexity several orders of magnitude. And we need citizen input on this. This has got to be in part and parcel, hand in glove with citizens. And it's a 5-year effort. So when we talk about innovation methods of problem finding, solution formulation, and solution implementation, this is that process over the course of 5 years. So if your problem finding lasts 2.5 years, how do you carry forward the knowledge and the insights as you move into implementing a solution? What we did, we were in the final phases of problem finding, really framing the problems that we're trying to solve with this new land development code, and we had a series of working groups that were going to meet to give recommendations to the consultants. And it was on household affordability, on missing middle, and housing compatibility, and it was on how small businesses interact with the land development code. We had 5 sessions for these 3 working groups, and what we did is all of the information is available, but it wasn't curated specifically for this purpose. So we can take the information that's already on the city website, it's already in notes, and we piled it up here and included it with the meeting notes and documentations so that we're knitting together those final journey maps of problem finding. This is also available to the public if you want to see it, codenext.bloomfire.com. So I think my takeaways here from my career as somebody who cares about the world, as somebody who cares about the organizations in which we work, who cares about creating good, positive outcomes, is that as the world is increasingly interconnected, disrupted, with no script, our organizations are evolving. And they're becoming networked, human-centered, and intentionally improvisational. To become networked, human-centered, and intentionally improvisational, we have to connect, coach, mentor, share, experiment, and use what you have. Tools to support creativity in your organizations and with your customers. It's a function of knowledge times your imagination times evaluating what you've got before you. Without those three ingredients, it's really hard to be creative and solve the problems that crop up before us. And so that's why I'm really passionate personally about knowledge management and making that easier and more accessible to anybody who needs the information that they need. That's what I got.